So the first day of what's going to be the last week of this phase of the Mike Duffy trial started with kind of it started on a slower than usual note. We heard from the Prime Minister's former Director of Issues Management, Chris Woodcock, and most of the first part of the day was taken up by the Crown Attorney, examining him on basically what life was like as a Director of Issues Management for the Prime Minister's office. Not a lot of new information came out in that round, although we did see some emails that haven't been disclosed before now. Most notably of which was correspondence between Mike Duffy and, of all people, the Senate Ethics Officer after the existence of the $90,000 payment had been revealed, and sort of discussing whether or not he should have disclosed it. And this was interesting only in that it seemed like an early attempt to kind of frame this as an entirely acceptable payment or an arrangement between Mr. Wright and Mr. Duffy, that just maybe they needed to do some paperwork on the disclosure front. So that was interesting. Then in the afternoon, Donald Bayne, who's of course Mr. Duffy's defense attorney, got his hands on the witness, Chris Woodcock, and whoa, did things get tense in a hurry. The questioning was very intense, and I think it's fair to describe Mr. Woodcock as a fairly hostile witness, at least in terms of how he's responding to Mr. Bayne. Mr. Bayne's key point, he wants Mr. Woodcock to explain how it is that he somehow never saw this email on his BlackBerry in which Nigel Wright said, I'm going to be covering Duffy's costs personally, which Mr. Woodcock insists he just didn't read that part of the email and found out about when everyone else did in May when the story broke. That obviously was a red flag to the bull that is Don Bayne, and he spent much of the afternoon kind of trying to eat away at his credibility, and Mr. Woodcock doing his best to fight back. It led to a fairly lively exchange. They only had about an hour together this afternoon. Mr. Woodcock is back in the witness box tomorrow, and I suspect we're going to see more fireworks. So that's going to take up at least tomorrow and possibly the rest of this week, but definitely an interesting note to end the first day of the last week back on.